Okay, guys, let's get this over with. This is my re-upload and putting the death battle that I originally had uploaded during Christmas time into my regular format. Sorry for those of you who liked it like that. Please leave me a comment section a comment in the comment section telling me why you preferred the other one if you did see it in the other way. For those of you who haven't, but please try not to spoil it for the result for those who haven't seen that other one and are coming here for this one. But moving on, let's talk about Toshiro Hitsugaya's specific abilities. He is pretty much, and as you can probably guess, I'm starting off with Toshiro. The next portion will be of Horohoro. So let's start off with Toshiro. Toshiro is hailed as a child prodigy that even surpasses the previous child prodigy, Gin Jimaru. Has to show how much of a prodigy Gin was. Gin's childhood friend, who is around the same age as him, is Toshiro's lieutenant. Meaning those two are at the same age, and yet Toshiro, who's younger than Rangiku, was skilled enough to become a captain over her, instead of her going from lieutenant to captain. He went from third seat to captain, seeing as she already had the lieutenant seat before he joined the 13 Court Guard squad. So that should tell you he is pretty much above normal Soul Reapers. Not only that, but his spiritual power, or Ryoka as it's called in the manga, is off the charts. It's immense and at least double the average, what an average captain should have for spiritual power. And he's a immensely good expert in strategy and a great tactician. He was able to discern that there was more to meet the eye with Gin Ichimaru, who again was also a pretty good strategist and tactician, and even when his abilities were crippled, was able to come up with several combo attacks that would allow him to resist fire, even though his ice was weakened at the time. He is not one to be messed with. He's a master swordsman and an expert in Kido, a Shupundo expert, which is the technique they use for high-speed movement, and a Hakido combatant, which means he's at least knows how to defend himself using Hakido. And yeah, that's about it. The only thing I have left to describe is his sword and what a Soul Reaper is. A Soul Reaper is basically a spirit, right? That just has immense willpower. Because any spirit that has immense willpower can become a Soul Reaper. It is basically just a job in the afterlife that they can take on. And I know what you're thinking. Spirit, that means he can't be killed. In the Bleach world, a spirit can be killed. When a spirit is killed, they are sent to Earth to be reborn in a newborn baby's body. Basically reincarnation. Meaning, you die as a human, your spirit goes up to the Soul Society to now live there. But if you die there, or you're reincarnated into a new human body, and the cycle continues like that. Oh, and also, so how new spirits are created? Yes, spirits can have new children and create another spirit. So Tōshirō could find another spirit in the afterlife and create a new spirit by marrying them eventually, if he so choose to. And then thereby making more spirits that are able to be reincarnated. Now, let's get on to his sword, which is the real meat of his abilities, his Zanbato, which literally translates to soul-cutting sword. Its name is Horohoro, but that wasn't always... But I feel I need to explain a little bit about the Zanbatos, how they work in general. A Zanbato is a soul-cutting sword that allows a soul reaper to perform its duties, which is sending spirits of dead humans to the afterlife, the Soul Society. They are also used for dealing with hollows. Hollows being souls that have stayed on Earth for far too long and have become corrupt, demon-crazed monsters. By slaying a hollow, you purify it of all the maliciousness that entered it after it died, and then it is sent to the soul afterlife. But when I say purify it, even if a hollow, say it killed someone, when its sins will be forgiven because it wasn't in control of itself, and was driven by the maliciousness that was poured into it. Now, if they killed someone while they were a human, though, that maliciousness is not removed by the Zanbato, so they're sent to hell. Moving on, there is one other thing I did need to talk about Tōshirō himself, but it also relates to his sword. Both him and his sword, which, first, let me say, his sword is basically a spirit in the form of a sword. Or I'll get to that in a sec. But both him and his sword can interact with physical matter and physical bodies, as he has been shown to physically be able to hurt humans and Fullbrinkers, which are composed of human bodies rather than the spiritual energy turned into the form of a body. That is... So, don't think he can't interact with physical matter. He can. He just can't be seen by the average person. He can still grab the average person, twirl him around, and then throw him into a building if he so wished to. They just wouldn't be able to see who did it. Moving on, though, his sword or spirit, most Zanbato have a blank spirit with no personality, kind of like a nobody from Kingdom Hearts, when they're first created. As they bond with their Soul Reaper, the Soul Reaper's personality and memories are all embedded into the sword, giving it personality traits and forming off its abilities based off its wielder. Most Soul Reapers don't ever synchronize with their Zanbatos, though, a few of them do, and those become seated members on their squad, or captains in Toshiro's case. And once you gained enough synchronicity with your sword to enter your inner consciousness and speak with the spirit of the sword, or that is when you will start to become a seated member. Because whereas most you would think, oh, everybody's going to be able to bond with their sword, or if it's their only sword and they are told they will not be given a replacement. Yes, but not everyone will bond to it to the level of being able to communicate with it. Once you are able to communicate with it, you will be entering its and yours shared consciousness and be able to communicate. Once there, you can ask it its name. In Toshiro's case, his sword's name is Horohoro, which translates to ice ring. Once you know its name, you gain access to an important ability. But let me just finish describing Horohoro's appearance before I talk about that ability. In its sealed state, which is what most Zanbato are in until that you have figured out their name, it is a 1.4 meter long sword, which gives him a fairly decent range. But once you know a sword's name, aim, and the incantation to do so, you can unseal it. This is the power I was talking about. Now, unsealing it, you put in the form called a shikai. A shikai is where a sword stops being a generic regular samurai katana and transforms into a unique weapon, or gains a unique ability unique to the wielder. Now, to activate a shikai, you must know the release command and the sword's name. You chant the release command, which for Toshirō in this case is sit upon the frosted heavens, and then say the sword's name. Aim Horohoro. Now, doing this for Toshirō gives him access to his shikai, which allows him to create ice, which is the bulk of his abilities. Horohoro's special abilities allows him to create an immense amount of power, which overflows from the tip of his blade, creating a flow of ice in the shape of a Chinese dragon. That is his main and most used ability when he first starts out with a shikai. Again. Now, other abilities get granted to him while as a shikai. And by the way, he can control that ice dragon by maneuvering around his sword. Or when the ice dragon is still connected to the sword and he's still making it grow longer. Once he's completed it, though, had it separate, like the ice stops ejecting out of his sword, though, its path is completely set. He also has a chain at the end of his blade, which can freeze anything Hitsugaya traps with it. The power it expels is so overwhelming that in the Soul Society, where Hitsugaya is not placed under a limiter, it's mere release affects the weather within the immediate vicinity, creating thunderstorms and blizzards. His most basic power, as well as his strongest, is to control the weather in his immediate vicinity. More specifically, the water in the surrounding atmosphere. That means water molecules, water vapor. he is completely have them under his control thanks to the ability of his Zanbato. However, Hitsugaya states that this aspect of his power is not fully matured and that he doesn't like to use it in Bankai mode, as he is unsure whether or not he could keep it from killing everyone in the vicinity. Meaning, he doesn't like to do, but if he has to, he'll use it. But probably he won't use it in Bankai mode. He will use it in Shikai mode. He has several different attacks, one of which is most of his techniques that he had as named that are specific to his Shikai are combo attacks with his lieutenant, but most of his other attacks are attacks that are not specific to his Bankai or Shikai. They just get stronger with his Bankai. Now, what is his Bankai, you may ask? A Bankai is the second evolution, which you gain by dragging your sword spirit into the real world rather than going to the mental plane and undergoing a test to gain the sword's true power. To unleash this power after you've unleashed your Shikai, all you have to say is Bankai. It changes your sword's name into something else. For Horohoro, it is Daigaron and Horohoro, which translates to Great Roaring Cloudly Shining Moon. Hitsugaya's Bankai causes ice to flow around Hiroma onto Hitsugaya, starting up his right arm, which then forms into the shape of a dragon, again around his sword hand, encasing the sword up to the hilt and giving him ice wings and ice feet. In this state, he is 10 times stronger than he previously was. According to Hitsugaya himself, his Bankai should his Bankai somehow end up trying to attack itself, the ice would instead be deflected somewhere else rather than the actually attack the Bankai. His special ability, he can freeze any object in an area, though the radius and strength of the freezing is greater. Because of the Bankai's freezing ability is much greater, Toshiro can swing his tail around as a weapon, which he does get an ice tail, to freeze objects. He also has Bankai regeneration, which if any portion of his Bankai is damaged, it can be regenerated, as long as there's water in the air. And what I'm getting at, let's see. If upon activating his Bankai, Toshiro is able to create and shape a large amount of ice into his exact likeness, basically making an ice clone. It can even appear to bleed to save it for towards the end of the battle. He can only do this attack once. That's why he usually saves it towards the end of the battle. It makes for a good decoy and basically a fake out to get his opponent to let their guard down. Rasensuke, when Hitsugaya stabs an opponent, huge bursts of ice erupt from the point of contact between his opponent, encasing them and freezing them. then proceeds to shatter the ice and his opponent with it. Hitsugaya can create many ice pillars which encircle him and his opponent and use them to crush his opponent. But this technique takes time and effort to set up. Now, his Hayu Ten Hakioso, which translates to Frozen Heaven 100 Flower Funeral, is the last technique I will be talking about. Well, the second to last technique I will be talking about before we move on to Horohoro. Well, no, move on to his weaknesses before we move on to Horohoro. This technique allows him to is basically an extension of the ability that I stated earlier that allows him to alter the weather. But he dislikes using it in Bankai mode because it's really because of the reasons I stated above. The ability opens up a huge hole in the clouds through which a large amount of snow flows down onto the opponent. As the snow comes into contact with the opponent, the ice flowers sprout all over their body, instantly trapping them in a pillar of ice. Claims that when the last of the 100 petals fall, the life of the one who touched it will be over. Then we have his icicle flock, which allows him to shoot out water from his. Which allows him, no, not shoot out water. Allows him to freeze water into ice and then swing the Zambaton an arc, firing an array of ice daggers at his target. Or swing his sword in a linear fashion, creating a wave of ice from his sword in a crescent format to fly towards his opponent. Now, let's talk about his weaknesses. He only has really one weakness, and that's extreme heat. When in the vicinity of the head captain, the captain commander, when the captain commander and the captain of squad, who is also the captain of squad 1 is in the vicinity of Toshiro Hitsugaya, he's unable to keep his Bankai activated. Now, why is that? Because the head captain's sword or its Bankai, which is the only time Hitsugaya had Bankai or Shikai, his Shikai or Bankai active, meaning his Shikai and Bankai both forcibly deactivate when in the presence of the head captain's Bankai. This has not been shown when it's his Shikai, but only when it's his Bankai. This is because the head captain's Bankai is so intense, and that not even water vapor isn't able to exist in around the heat. So what does that leave us with? So what does that mean? It means he broke up the bonds of H2O, breaking it down into hydrogen, hydrogen 2, oxygen O2, oxygen 2, and oxygen and OH, not H2O. And the only temp and the known requirement for heat being able to do that is 5,432 degrees Fahrenheit, meaning it takes at least 5,432 degrees Fahrenheit to make a Hitsugaya sword or just a regular katana, by force. Otherwise, his sword is completely fine. So unless it reaches that height, his sword will always be able to stay active. So unless you can find heat that high, his sword's going to be active no matter what. So that's it for Hitsugaya's abilities. Let's move on to Horohoro's. Okay, now let's talk about Horohoro's abilities. Has a Inuwa member, and Inuwa is the Japanese Indians or natives. It's native Japanese people, similar to how we have Native Americans. They are basically a Japanese. If I'm being simplistic here, they are a Japanese version of the Native Americans, if you would. Anyway, he is also a shaman within his people. And being a shaman, he is able to see spirits and any other form of apparition. He's also able to interact with them. By combining his Furyoku or willpower with the willpower / Ryoku of a spirit, right, into a medium, he's able to form a metaphysical object known as an oversoul, which is a weapon that can both harm the spirits and also cause damage on the physical plane. They can only be defeated by their oversoul, or even destroyed. Has no other form of weapons in Shaman King has worked. Now moving on. As a shaman, Trey is pretty skilled and when the situation calls for it, he can be very serious and very skilled. And his spirit partners are no joke either. Spirit partners or spirits come in 3 classes in Shaman King. Ghost class, which are normal human ghosts and such. And then there are Shiri class, which are human ghosts that have evolved over thousands of years of staying on the planet, or animal spirits that have done the same, or nature spirits. Right? And then the last one is Kame class, or God level spirits. Trey has 2 spirits, a Shiri class and a Kame class spirit. The first one is his most used and most iconic partner, Kori, a Minusian nature spirit who is the reincarnation of his dead love. She was the girl that he loved died of frostbite via a tragic story that involved it involved her father building a dam and trying to destroy nature. So, sure, even though she didn't agree with her father's plans and such, and Horohoro's father basically forced him to shun her over her relation to him, which caused her to follow him to his home in the forest, which to try and find out why she was being shunned, and because he wasn't even able to tell her why, which led to her catching frostbite and dying. And well, her spirit didn't want to leave the plane because she wanted to protect Horohoro or longer. And here's the thing. Horohoro's father's spirit, the leader of the Minusians, gave her the chance to become a nature spirit and help protect nature, allowing her to stay, which allowed her to stay and protect, and thereby protect Horohoro. He didn't know about this until as of recently, which unlocked her true form of being about the size she used to be, and has strengthened their bond. Now, an oversoul is formed by using a medium. Trey, I keep using Trey because that's the English anime's name for him, and it's simpler than pronouncing Horohoro, but I'm going to be using Horohoro. Horohoro is basically he has two mediums that he uses with Kori. One was a snowboard, and the other was an iku posse, a prayer stick. The snowboard he carved himself, so by making it himself, it's a good medium because Kori is close to him, and there's an object close to him is close to her. The Ikupasi is also a good one because it relates to the Minusians, and it was carved by Horohoro's sister, Pyrrhica, or however you pronounce that. It makes for a good spiritual medium. He uses the Ikupasi. As of late, he uses the Ikupasi rather than the snowboard. But if I have to describe his snowboard, his Kori snowboard oversoul's abilities, it has such. He integrates her into the snowboard, or enveloping the board with the pattern, with basically a totem around it. And he connected the snowboard to his arm rather than connecting it to his feet. Anyway, the Oversoul uses ice power and freezes moisture in the atmosphere to harden into ice. Over time, Horo begins attaching the board to his arm for more convenience. It can release cold air and can also be released from a gust of cold air can be used to help propel him in another direction. Has such and such. But he can create giant hail bombs to launch at his opponent, and you use another attack that he uses with this is also create a massive icicle at the bottom of his snowboard, which he can use to try and stab you with like he's dive bombing you. This was when he had it on his feet. It's not an effective move. Then his most powerful move in this form is where he freezes every bit of water vapor in there to make it become snowflakes and amasses it into a big avalanche that crashes onto everything in its path. Surf the avalanche with his snowboard, adding more damage. Then his most powerful attack while using this oversoul and most used in when he had started attaching it to his arm rather than his feet so he could have more mobility is the Nupupu punch. And yes, he named an attack the Nupupu punch. You may laugh now. This is one of Horohoro's most used attacks. Using the large ice statue around his arm created by the Oversoul, he can freeze almost anything it hits and then shatter it on impact. His second Oversoul, when integrating Kori into the Ikupasi, is basically the Kori Ikupasi Oversoul, which has one attack to it. And this attack is the near pinnacle of his power. He creates a blade of pure spiritual power and slashes. This attack freezes everything the blade touches, and the ice then explodes, doing more damage. Later on, he changed his Oversoul from being an ice shield surrounding the Ikupasi to being the new. He still used the Ikupasi as the medium, and he still used Kori as his spirit for this, but he changed the form of the Oversoul, if I'm to be accurate, into the Nupupu, yes, Takenpi gauntlets. Yes, you may laugh now. Now, again, these gauntlets are enormous ice gauntlets that form around each of his arms. Hera Kihako, the left, which translates to left husband, which is on his left arm, and Shima Mataki, which translates to right wife, on his right arm. Yes, funny. I get it. His girlfriend is basically a spirit. We get it already. You don't have to make these in references. Ugh. But his basic attacks using this Oversoul are the Shimaku, the right wife freezing hand, which is a defensive technique in which Horohoro freezes and shatters anything he touches with his right gauntlet. Then his Howling Wind, the fist that God offered, an offensive version of the previous technique in which Horohoro punches the target and flash freezes them at the same time, which causes them to shatter, making this his most powerful attack. Then his left husband, Little Rudget, Horohoro punches the air with his left gauntlet, freezing solid air with his left gauntlet, freezing solid and then shattering anything that is in a linear path of the hand, even if out of his arm's reach. So his right arm has to have contact to do freezing, whereas his left arm gives him range damage. So, but it's only in a linear fashion. So it's not. So if someone's rapidly moving, it's not a very effective attack. Now I said he had another spirit, and that is the spirit of rain, which is a god class spirit, and this spirit it can move on its own and is basically a pretty powerful spirit. But what medium does he use with the spirit? He uses the water in the atmosphere. The water vapor itself has the medium. Basically he uses this to make the oversoul spirit of rain, which makes the entire spirit, recreates the entire spirit into an oversoul. So that it'd be like if you were able to, if someone made a Mitamaru, or me, say I was a ghost, and he basically turned me into a physical oversoul. Normally, if I wasn't an oversoul, I wouldn't be able to touch this computer, but after turning me into an oversoul, I'd be able to do this. I look the same. So, he's basically, with this oversoul, he corporealizes or makes the spirit of rain able to act on the physical plane. With this oversoul, it mimics his movements exactly, making it so with every attack he does 2 attacks. And when combined with the abilities of Kori, the spirit of rain creates ice. His most powerful attack is called the Huge Hue's Frozen Mountain, which is a massive icicle noted to be the largest in the world, to attack an opponent by slamming it downward into them. So, now that I've talked about each of their abilities, let's get on to their AMVs, show them off, and then get on to the results, and then I'll explain what the character who won. So, let's see. Let's start off with Toshiro's AMV, then Horohoro's. After the show.
You know, every world will have its end. I'm here to prove it all to you. I am who you don't think I am. All wrapped up Coming out of sun, coming out to stun. Your chance is none. Nothing can be done. Catch me if you can. There's no turning back. Reach but never catch. You can't fathom that. Wonders you can't have. There's no turning back. Reach but never catch. You can't fathom that. Wonders you can't have. Catch me if you can. There's no turning back. Reach but never catch. You can't fathom that. Wonders you can't have. There's no turning back. Reach but never catch. You can't fathom that. Wonders you can't have. So catch me if you can. We are born to dream in a world full of scenes that we never could reach. Airtime X on the way and I be like life right by. It's the blood you see. One mind, two out, stuck in divinity. Heart tear, wing claw, heaven sent a Jesse. A speed rush, tweet to a melancholy victory. Your chance don't scan. Catch me if you can. 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 Only if you can. Coming out of sun, coming out to stun. Your chance is none. Nothing can be done. No one here, class P. The rule of the win is to never get beat. Don't rush, don't hard. You're put to test like Jet as Hawk. I'll rattle your neck. I never come down, I'm high alone. The breath from a genie with wings and throne. Just by heart disguise me. All for the speed I was born to be. There's no turning back. Reach but never catch. You can't fathom that. Wonders you can. Coming out of sun, coming out to stun. Your chance is none. Nothing can be done. Kills in the emeralds, life is ephemeral. What you gonna do? Nothing is perpetual. World domination, advanced technology. Haven't got the interest in that phone glow. Put me in the air, my speed will leave. All in the shine like a miracle weave. I just won't stop the treasure for me. Said it before I was born to be. Coming out of sun, coming out to stun. Your chance is none. Nothing can be done. Catch me if you can.
Now I know what you're thinking. How does Horohoro lose if he's a pretty good combatant too, and his abilities are similar to Toshiro's? And here's the thing. You also might think the weakness of the O is in the fact that he has two spirits that he's using at the same time. He has to put in a decent amount of Furyoku into each oversoul. And if the oversoul is damaged, to fix it, he has to add in more Furyoku to replace the lost Furyoku. Now, I know what you're thinking, but didn't I say only oversouls could damage oversouls? Yes. but that's in the Shaman King universe. And unlike Death Battle, where it's kind of like an apple, like how where there's nothing in Guts' universe that is equatable to the weapon that he broke in the Death Battle. There is a weapon in the Bleach universe that is made similarly to the Oversouls that has been damaged by Zanbatos. And it's the Quincy weapon, or the Quincy bow, or whatever form they choose to put it in. They can gather Reishi or spirit or Ryoka, which is spiritual power or willpower, just like the Furyoku of the shaman and the Ryoka of their spirit partner, and put it into a little Quincy cross, which then they form their weapon around. Just like an Oversoul, and it has been damaged by a Zanbato, leaving there being no question that an Oversoul could be damaged by a Zanbato. Also, those of you who are acting like there's nothing that could damage that Horohoro couldn't damage Trey. I mean not Trey, Toshiro. Oh, no, he could, because again, like the it's equatable to a Quincy bow or a Quincy weapon, which has hurt Soul Reapers. But the difference here comes down to he has to be able to. His stamina is being taxed double what it would normally be if he was just using Kori, because he's got two spirits and two oversouls to constantly maintain. He's dividing his efforts, meaning his stamina is going away twice as fast. Plus, he's easily provoked, as stated by his official personality. Whereas the only thing that easily provokes Toshiro is Momo. And we're not bringing Momo in here to get eat up, so Toshiro can just fly off the deep end and randomly lose, so that's out of the question. Horohoro, on the other hand, can be provoked at insults, being called an idiot, pretty much anything. He can be a hothead at times. And the experience gap also comes into a factor. Plus, the fact that they're both skilled ice users and use ice in the same method, similar methods, means it's going to be hard for one of them to put the other down. But Toshiro's weapon is a sword. So even if he stops using the freezing ability and just stabs him through the heart, Frey can't stop. There's no ice there for him to control in that kind of attack, which he can do. And also, Hitsugaya is naturally faster and stronger. He's over 14 times faster, and at least 5 times stronger than Tunger. And that's without the Bankai, which increases his speed and strength and his ice making abilities by 10. All in all the experience, plus the fact that he can hurt him, and the double taxation on Horohoro's abilities makes the winner clear. It's Toshiro Hitsugaya. But because of Horohoro's abilities and the fact that he can come at Toshiro from 2 different angles, it doesn't make this an easy win. And it was pretty close, really close. But also that ice clone takes a little bit into a factor. He can use that near the end of a fight to get Horohoro to let his guard down. And then... So, and by the way, the less Furyoku you put into a Oversoul, the weaker it is. And as he goes down, he has less and less to put it in, so his strength of his attacks is going down with each time his Oversoul is damaged. So, all in all, the winner is Toshiro Hitsugaya. Sorry, guys. See you next time, where the next fight is Aquaman versus Namor the Submariner. You'll see that fight pretty soon. See ya. Okay, let me give you the stats before I go, though, about Toshiro and Horohoro. Horohoro's stats and strength and speed are... Horohoro can lift 1,518 pounds and approximately move at 500 miles per hour for his speed. While Toshiro, on the other hand, approximating his strength, he's able to lift overhead because that's the measurement I'm using for both those two. How much they could and hold over their head for the amount of time a regular person would be doing a overhead press. So Toshiro's Hitsugaya's overhead press is 15,545 tons versus pounds. His strength far surpasses Horohoro's, and the 15,000 tons is taking into account is pretty much a pretty big deal, and that is without Bankai. Oh, well, scratching. Actually, that one was... Nah. Moving on, we are at Toshiro's speed, which, if I'm to be quite frank, if I'm to be quite frank here, I don't even think I have to go any further, but let's see how fast he is. His speed is 754,967 miles per hour. Yes, that is the gap in their physical capabilities. It is because of that gap in the app that you saw, the app that I decided to added that Toshiro had the most likely chance of winning. So, see you guys.